just because it says it's Model 1 doesn't mean it's a preferred model. They're not in any priority order at all. Okay, we're just calling this one Model 1. It's linked parishes, and it's probably the one that you know the best because of your own experience. And we're going to, John and I are going to describe each one of them. I just want you to see the 5 before we go into that. Second one we're going to talk about is partnership. Again, it's not in priority order. Third model is merged parish. Fourth model is pastoral administrators. And the 5th model is an insolidum team. So let's take a look at linked models. In some dioceses, many of you already know what a linked model is. It's one pastor serving more than one parish.
Or pastoral administrator.
It's one pastor or pastoral administrator serving more than one parish. A linked parish happens then, and you can read it from here, where it talks about parishes share a pastor or a pastoral administrator. It's let me say this. In another diocese we're working with, they also have a lot of linked parishes. And they're making a pretty strong rule that a pastor can only 2 parishes can be linked, because what's been happening is 2 parishes are linked, and then the pastor is asked to take a 3rd parish or a 4th parish or a 5th parish. Yeah, so and I can tell. So they're going to set some limits on how many parishes can be linked. And the bishop, when he talked this morning, mentioned that we're very aware, and the bishop's very aware, that you just can't keep asking you to do more and more and more and more. Okay, so linked parishes, you know what they are. They're individual parishes, canonical parishes. You can share programs, you might be able to share some councils, but you need to have your own finance committee canonically. So those are some of the characteristics of linked parishes, and we know that's one, again, that you probably know better than any other ones.
The second one is called partnership parishes. This is really about substantive partnership. It's not about, well, gee, let's see these 2 parishes if we can share pancake breakfast every other week. This is about sharing joint programs, perhaps sharing staff. Some parishes that are in partnership share, have a joint youth minister or outreach coordinator or bereavement minister, things they could not do by themselves, but in partnership they can do more strongly. They share in-services or retreats for councils and committees. So less meetings, working smarter, not harder, really substantive. In one diocese we worked in, some of the partnerships were not just local, but they were into the inner city of a certain area or beyond. So this is another option. Every option has to be tested against the local reality, but that's the first 2, linkage and partnership.
And one of the things to realize is that every single parish in a cohort, meaning with other parishes, will be asked to choose one of these models. There's never going to be a parish that says, I'm a standalone parish, I don't have to do anything with anybody. And that's based on the goals, and it's based on the assumptions. So even large suburban parishes that are well staffed, that have enough financial resources, are going to be asked to choose one of these models. And we'll talk more about that as we go along. The next one is merged parishes, and that's, again, John's talked about this. It's when 2, 3, 4, 5 parishes come together to form a brand new parish. We have had experiences in Milwaukee, for instance, where in Fond du Lac, there were 6 parishes up there. They started out being served by an insolidum team of priests, and within about 2 years, the people said, why don't we just become the Catholic community of Fond du Lac? They became one parish. Now it's about 10 years old. They have a brand new church. They used many of the churches that they had, not all of them, but many of them. They had a school system for the whole area. So, that's an idea that came again from the grassroots. In Scranton, in Nanticoke, the same kind of thing happened, where the bishop would have been pleased if there, instead of having 5 parishes? 6 parishes, that he would have had 2 clusters of 3 each, and the people themselves. It was painful, but it was excellent pastoral leadership. Through a process that people said, look, this doesn't make any sense, let's have one parish. So again, there's lots of different ways to look at this. When the people are involved, which is one of the assumptions where you get gold stars for the more people you have involved, it's amazing the kinds of ideas they came up with, both in what we call in Milwaukee Diocese the Holy Land. It's a very rural area, and in another kind of bedroom community, 3 small parishes, small churches. So if they merged, they didn't have any one place to go. That was the issue. In both cases, farmers who were part of the planning process said, I'll give you land right in the middle. So again, some things that look impossible, how can we merge 3 parishes because their churches are so small? People begin to come up with ideas of how to begin to do that. One of the advantages is vibrant parish worship. People like it when there's more people in church than they've seen before, and the music is better, and there seems to be a greater sense of life.
There's something else mentioned here under merger, just to think about. Sometimes an additional worship site can become part of that, so that it's not, let's say if 3 or 4 communities are coming together, maybe the geography is such that it's hard to kind of gather people. There might become one community at whatever the main site is, and then there's an additional worship site typically evaluated every couple of years to see if that's still good stewardship to have that open. So there's lots of ways to play that one out. The 4th one you already use in this diocese, Canon 517, paragraph 2, in terms of the role of pastoral administrators, and as you know, with a priest to be the sacramental minister as well. As someone said this morning, that relationship is really key for the success of that model. I was responsible for nine years of my time in Seattle for these folks. We call them parish life directors there, and I know how much vibrancy and life they brought, and also how critical that role is between the pastoral administrator and the priest. So that's a 4th model to look at, whether in an urban or a rural setting as well. And
the last one is the in solidum team, and this is really dependent upon the priest, because it can't be imposed. And even if all the people want to have a team of priests, you have to have, as you would know, the right team of priests. And again, it can be 2 or 3 priests serving 5 or 6 parishes, but they do it as a team, and one priest is the moderator of that team. Right now in Milwaukee, we're doing it with the downtown parishes, and it was not the bishop who asked the priest to do it. The priest had to beg the bishop to do it because he was afraid that they were going to get worn out. But it's 3 priests, 4 parishes, fairly large size parishes, and some are multicultural. So again, when that works well, it works well because a group of you say, hey, this is a mess up here. Why don't we could put our minds to it? We could serve these parishes. Why don't we do it? It's that kind of a thing where it really works well.
So far we've tried to answer a bit of the question, why the process in terms of the goals, what underlies it, what are the models. We now want to kind of move to a how. So on the top of page 8, trying to put this together, we want to share with you what we would call the 8-step approach. So if you can kind of catch this, we'll later kind of put dates on it when this would be on, but this is a way to think of the whole process. And I'm just going to come out so I can look at the screen too. But the first 2 steps, we're clearly at step 1 right now, just saying hello to all of you. But conversation has begun for many months, really, probably for more than a year, Bishop, as you've been thinking about this, talking about it with that committee you talked about. So it's been at the diocesan level. Really, beginning today, it moves to the parishes with your thoughts as pastors, pastoral administrators, and then we're going to propose some dates in November. One of the dates we're going to propose, we learned this morning, was the start of hunting season. That's what we're... So we will... I want to say up front, this is like preemptory. We've already removed that date from the calendar. They said there's no way you're going to get to any of that. So, but the conversation is really important. That idea of being able to talk to and listen to each other. And the conversation will begin in November at the parish level. We'll describe in a little while parish core teams, the pastor or the pastoral administrator plus 4. So we'll be asking each of you to identify 4 people, maybe somebody from the Pastoral or Finance Council, maybe somebody from the staff, maybe a couple of parish elders or parish folks who have that larger vision of church to join you as the core group. They'll do a parish phase, and then it'll move to a cohort level where you'll be talking with neighboring parishes as well. So that conversation leads in step 2, as Maureen just said, to a suggestion that each cohort or grouping of parishes will make suggestions about their future. What's your best thinking is essential, and why? So the rationale is equally important. So you'll be asked to choose one or maybe a combination of these models, depending on where your creativity goes, and talk about why. That work, which will be done by June, will go to a planning commission. The planning commission, which is yet to be put together, is going to be about half ordained folk, half lay religious folk, with some sensitivity to the geography of the diocese, to the 3 regions of the diocese. That planning commission will be doing a lot of work. So if you're asked to be on it, know it's a wonderful job and it's a lot of work, but it's really to study all the suggestions that come in from all the cohorts, and then to make preliminary recommendations back to each cohort. Sometimes those preliminary recommendations will be, we agree with your suggestion, and maybe we add a few things to it. Other times it might say, we've read your work, we respectfully disagree. And this is our preliminary recommendation. In essence, the best thinking of the Planning Commission back to the cohorts. They then have a chance in step 4 for more conversation, and step 5, a response. So at the local level, know that you and the people on your core team have 2 really critical opportunities to think about what's the best suggestion, and then once you receive the preliminary recommendation, what's the best response and why. That then will go back to the Planning Commission for step 6, where the Planning Commission studies all the responses now and then makes final recommendations to the bishop, saying, we believe, having studied the input from all the people in 2 rounds of dialogue with them, these are our best recommendations. I don't believe the bishop has any list in his pocket right now, so these are going to come through the process. In fact, the bishop in Peoria last week, Bishop Jenke, in his opening letter to the people who were at the training sessions, said in his closing paragraph something like, you may think that I have a list in my drawer. Let me tell you very directly, there is no such thing. I'm depending on you to offer your best thoughts on how we can structure the diocese for the future. So that step 7 will be several months of time for the bishop to consult with the Presbyteral Council, with other advisory groups he chooses to consult with, to pray about it. As Bishop, you said this morning, to cry about it, maybe in some cases as the challenge of some of this becomes very immediate, but ultimately to announce around January of 2013 the new configuration. And then that moves to the last word here, implementation. And that won't happen immediately. What we've found is that people need time to digest what's going to be their new reality, so there's a period of preparing to implement the bishop's decisions, which by then have become directives. So that step of conversation, suggestion, leading to a preliminary recommendation, conversation, response, leading to a final recommendation, then the decision period, really, for the bishop and advisors to discern and think about this, and then moving to implementation is the 8 steps. We'll come back to the timing of it, but I think it's more important maybe to get into the people